Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Welcome. We're glad you've joined us today. Whether you're a first-time listener or regular listener, we're just glad you're on board. Have a friend with me today I'm going to be interviewing that I've known for some time. I think you'll find it interesting how she and I connected. We'll let you know that here in a minute. But Jolene, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Randy.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you go ahead and tell the folks how you and I first met, how we first became friends, okay? I'd rather they'd hear it from you.
Randy used to be my junior high football coach. So, I played football in junior high at West J Junior High, and Randy was a coach there. Yep.
Yes, West J's in Dunkirk,
yes,
right?
Yep.
Absolutely. And Jolene held her own ground. I don't mind telling you, we didn't have to protect her for sure. And part of that comes from having a lot of brothers and cousins, and I'm sure the game got physical at home.
Oh, yeah, I was the only girl until I had my daughter on my dad's side of the family. So
Wow,
yeah.
Wow, yeah. So, Jolene, we'd like for you to share with our listeners out there, what was life like before the addiction? Who were you? How did it look? Just share that, please.
I enjoyed spending time with my family, with my grandparents. I grew up with two brothers, so I was always active in sports. I enjoyed softball, just a regular kid doing regular things. And I started using when I was about 13 years old, so there wasn't a whole lot of childhood before that addiction that I have to recall.
So you don't remember a lot prior to the addiction.
Right.
So how do you believe the addiction got started? What were those moments? Technically, how did it begin? And maybe if you could recall any of your thoughts.
As I look at it now and I process it, I feel like it was trauma-induced in some ways. In other ways, it was bad choices that I was making, peer pressure, things like that. But mostly, I think it was just not knowing the dangers and just trying to fit in, and it just went too far.
We're all in that battle to fit in, and we sometimes make the wrong choice as to what group to fit in with, but the one that'll accept us is the direction we're going to go most of the time, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was those folks that accepted you, made you feel like somebody.
And it was a normal thing. Some people say, well, they would go skating or they would go to games or stuff with their friends, but my friends and we would set up down at the four-way and drink beer or smoke pot or whatever we were doing, It was a normal thing.
What was the drug that you first started with?
Marijuana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you remember how you got your first marijuana?
I don't even remember the first time I smoked it, but I'm sure somebody had it, and it was just
passed around and shared.
Yeah, it didn't seem dangerous or scary because most of our parents were doing it. It wasn't something that was unknown to us.
Okay, you were comfortable with that then to a point.
Right.
Yeah. How long was it marijuana before it went to something else? I
was very bad with alcohol, and then meth really bad by the time I was 15 years old.
By the time you were 15.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little about the battle with alcohol, what that looked like at that age, and then we'll move forward in a minute.
It was just what we kind of lived to do. It was like I can remember days when we didn't have no money and our parents wouldn't give us money, so we would go find all the change we could find, roll pennies, whatever we could find. We'd go buy a liter of vodka, some orange juice, and a joint, and we would drive around until it was gone, and we did that. That was all we had to do. It was mostly just everybody we knew, that's what we did.
Was this mainly with those your own age, or was this...
It varied.
It varied.
The age varied. Of course, there has to be somebody 21 to buy the alcohol, and real good friend of mine, I think she was the youngest of us all, and she was just a couple years younger than me. So she was probably 13, So it varied from 13 to probably 28 years old. All the different groups of us just running around. It was just a normal thing that we did.
It just depended on the given night who was there and how it was going to play out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from the alcohol then, how long was alcohol your drug of choice before you took the next step?
I don't know that alcohol was ever really a drug of choice. It was more a drug of convenience.
Aha, makes sense.
Yeah. And then a couple friends started making meth, and it just spiraled out of control from there, It gets a hold of you, there's not a lot you can do.
Tell us about that battle that you had with the meth. How long, what were some of the feelings, what were some of the struggles, any losses, relationships broken?
Yeah. My battle with meth lasted for almost 20 years. During that time, I lost a lot of people I care about, including my children. I lost relationships with my parents, my siblings. It almost makes me cry today because I think of all the pain I caused the people I love, and it's sometimes hard to hold, And I don't know how much you want me to say yet. So
You go ahead.
Like,
Don't stop until you're ready to stop.
you go through this addiction and you think that you're not hurting anybody, or it's not leaving lasting effects that will follow you for the rest of your life, or you're in the moment and you don't even realize the pain and suffering you're causing people. And I've been sober for August was 3 years.
Congratulations.
And I have had people doubt me. I've had people talk badly about me. I've been in and out of courts. I've done everything I can do to show people that I'm a different person now. And the people that I love the most are the people that I'm still having to prove that to today. And
Is part of that because they're the ones you hurt the most and they're just scared to let their guard down, maybe?
yep, I think that's what it is. It's their way to protect themselves. And once you've caused so much pain to somebody, like my daughter, for instance, when you've caused so much pain to somebody and you keep telling them over and over, you're going to fix it, you're going to be better, and you let them down constantly, I could see how it could be really hard to trust in anything they have to say or believe that they're going to do better. She never seen me in her life sober until she's 18 now, 15 years old. So it was a very hard life for her, I'm sure. A lot of things that will follow her for her life, trauma, pain, abandonment issues, things like that she's going to have to deal with as she's, learning to be an adult and work through those things.
I know you've shared enough with me to realize that some of the ways you modeled yourself as a parent wasn't the way that you wanted someone to see or path you want your children to follow.
That's right.
There were those times there was some violence in there.
Domestic abuse goes hand in hand with alcohol and drug abuse. I mean, it does. And my husband and I, we got sober together. He has 31 more days clean than I do.
Right.
But I'm real proud of him too. And when we hit our rock bottom, it was bad, Randy. And he filed for divorce, and in that, the judge granted him, our home and our son, and I had to be kicked out on the street. I was not allowed to be there. So at one point in time, I was living in a tent in my mom and dad's backyard. I couldn't even go in their house because they were done. They didn't trust me. They didn't want nothing to do with it, and I can't blame them for that. In that moment, though, I was the victim. It was, why are you treating me this way? Just, trying to make them feel bad so I can manipulate and get what I wanted from them. And I live with that stuff still today, too.
I'm sure, as with most of those who struggle with addiction, you had that ability to manipulate what you had to do to get to that next moment, to get that next fix, that next hit.
Yeah.
And though you wanted to find your way out, you were so deep into the darkness that had to be hard to do. Is that accurate?
It's very accurate. I remember before because I had attempted to get sober many times before. And, you've traveled this road with me and you've seen it. And I would do good and then I would fall down. And I would do good and then I would fall down. But it was always trying to do good for somebody else. It wasn't ever really me investing in me. And it was because somebody else was telling me to do it. Well, then there came a point when, I was homeless. All I had was a vehicle. Everything I had in the vehicle, selling drugs, and have any of my children, nothing. And I was in a state away from home, which I didn't have home, but as far as where I've always been from. And I remember one time I just pulled over on the side of the road and I just laid out. I got out and I laid in the road and I just begged God to kill me. Let a car come by and run me over, because the life I was living was so painful and so heavy to carry, but I couldn't see a way out of it. And I wanted it to stop. And I don't know, I'm here today.
That's hard for most folks to imagine that you could get to that point. And I'm sure you never planned or wanted to get to that point.
No. Mm-mm.
But you said it earlier on, once it gets hold of you, it just gets an incredibly tight grip and long arms that keep pulling you back.
Yeah, I think of it like, it's, to me, now that I'm sober and I see it from a different perspective, it's almost like some type of oppression on a person, like a type of demonic oppression that you can't get away from.
Well, you're living without control of your own life.
Yeah.
And once you take control, you can look back and see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were some of the moments, not necessarily the lights on moment that moved you toward recovery, but what are some of the things that maybe went through your mind, the experiences that I've got to get out of this. I've got to change my life. I've got to find a better life.
Well, Randy, after we had gotten the order from the judge and I was kicked out of our home, I went and got high and I sat and I got angry and real angry. And I, about 4 o'clock in the morning, entered into my husband's house and I physically attacked him. And the cops ended up getting called and I was arrested. And I spent some time in jail, and I'd say about 9 or 10 days into jail, give or take a couple days, there was just this moment of clarity, this moment that, for me, it's my higher power, it's God. It was me desperately begging. I remember laying in that cell saying, whatever it takes, whatever you need me to do, I will do it. I promise I will. I just need to get out of here. And the longer I sat there, the more sober I got. DCS had took my son. My daughter was already had been removed from the house a couple years prior. And it was just this thing that came over me, and it's hard to explain. I can't explain it to you, but I knew in that moment that I was going to do whatever it took to never live that life again.
That's the same God that you asked to have somebody in a car run over
Absolutely.
you. Yes. Here he is meeting you at that level.
Yep.
And letting you know that you matter, that he cares, that you're important. I remember, if you wouldn't mind speaking to it, and if you'd rather not, by all means you don't have to, but during that domestic violence, as I recall, you accidentally struck one of your kids.
That's right.
Yeah?
Yep.
Would you just tell them briefly about that?
It was
Jolene?
more of trying to strike my husband.
Yes.
And he was trying to grab our son and flee. And in the crossfire, I struck my son. And it was never with an intention. And I'm thankful that didn't ever follow me around, for a long time. But people think that when you get in recovery, it's this, I don't know what people think, but I've experienced, some people think that when you get in recovery, there's this magical transformation. Everything's going to be perfect. It's going to be, you shouldn't. Recovery is the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. To set and evaluate yourself daily, like I did this. I got to make amends with this. Oh my goodness, what, and that's a lot. That's a lot for somebody to look in the mirror and realize you're the root of all your problems. Your choices are the root of all this pain you're causing yourself and everybody else. And you have to admit that to yourself before you could ever move forward. That's a lot. That
has to be scary. There was comfort in the misery compared to the fear of what's clean going to look like,
right.
What's sober going to be like, how am I going to live, how am I going to survive? Is that accurate?
It's very accurate because, I never held a job really. I had over 80 jobs in my life. I never held a job continuously because I always was getting high and couldn't go to work. I just couldn't go to work. And so I never had no stability, and I did everything that my husband and I have now came from our recovery. You know, the hard work, the things that we're doing, and the family that we have. And there's the consequences of my choices follow me around still. Like, my daughter is 18 years old. She's a great kid. But she's angry, you know, and she finally, for the first time, here about a month or so ago, I'm not good with time, you know, but within the last couple months, told me that she hated me. She hated me for the life that her brother has that she deserved. She hated me for making her feel like she was never enough. And she spoke on saying that she knew that that was immature. You know, she said that she hated her brother for the things that he was getting to experience that she couldn't, and or jealous of him, not hated, jealous. And she knew that that wasn't right. And I have to give her credit for knowing that that's not right, but yet finally being able to use her words. You know, for the last 3 years, I've been trying to dig into the root of what do I got to do to make this relationship better? What do I got to do to build a relationship with her? Because we never really truly had one. And all along, I just had to listen, I guess. I don't know, and then let her go. Let her.
It had to be a combination. Of course, you had to listen, but she had to be ready to speak and be able to use the words to express it. It sounds to me like she was very clear on that.
And I just told her, you know, I understand that. And, I mean, those are her feelings, and they're valid, and it may be painful to me, but I've got to hear that, because imagine how painful that is to her.
Oh, my. Yeah. You spoke a couple moments ago about evaluating your own life and that pain, and to have that play into it, that can become a stepping stone or a stumbling block, depending again on your next choice, because of those choices that got you there.
Yeah, and I think recovery gives you that. It gives you the ability to stop and take in everything that's happening, and then make the best choice you can make from the wisdom you've gained in recovery. What's best for you? Like 3-4 years ago, I would have never used words. I would have been like, well, you don't need to feel that way towards me. I don't owe you anything, you know, and it would have made me angry because I was being selfish, being the victim. But in recovery, it's allowed me to, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree. But how do we fix this?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when you first started attending A Better Life, Brianna's Hope, and the attitude you came with, you were searching, but you still carried a lot of the old baggage with you, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
You don't just dump it in a day. Recovery doesn't happen in a day.
No, it doesn't.
That's a full life process. So what were some of the highlights for you on the way to the point of recovery where you're at right now?
I'm going to tell you, Randy, this might sound crazy to some people, but I remember my husband and I's divorce did not go all the way through. You know, it was just, we had went to a hearing to start the dissolution, and they had temporarily granted these things until the dissolution.
Okay.
So we also, during that time, had a DCS case for the domestic violence and for our son being in DCS care. And I remember I had this court-appointed attorney, and I told him, I said, because my husband and I had a no-contact order as well for the domestic abuse. I said, I need you to go in this courtroom, and I need you to tell this judge that I need these no-contact orders dropped. I need to be able to be around my son and my husband to do the things I need to do to get my family back together. You know, I think I had about 60 days in recovery when that happened, and 30 of those days were spent in jail. So he said, well, that's not going to happen. It's absolutely not going to happen. And I remember there was a handful of people from Brianna's Hope there to support us. And I just felt, and I knew in my heart, I done prayed about it, and I knew it was going to happen. And I told him, I said, well, if you're not going to say it, then I just need you to sit down and be quiet, and I'll tell him what I need from him. And he said, well, we'll try. And, you know, God willing, that judge sat right there, and he granted the things that I needed. And that lawyer just could not believe it. You know, he just couldn't believe it. And it wasn't very long after that, we walked into another courtroom, and the judge in there heard us. He heard our recovery. We had people there from Brianna's Hope. He's seen the change in us, and he let our son come home. So our son was only in DCS care for 6 months, which is actually a very short time.
It is.
Yeah. So I say I credit all that to God, but I credit that to my husband and I as well for putting in the work, you know, for allowing ourselves to grow and leave that life behind.
I think we have to recognize that I believe in God's power, His ability, all that He can do, but He's not going to do it all.
Right.
He wanted to see how serious you were. And to show that, it became very clear, and the doors started to open, and the two of you started walking through them.
I just tell people, I'm like, you know, Rob and I say this a lot. If you just take the next right step, everything will fall into place. And that's like my answer for everything, because the hell that I came through, all I had to do was just keep making the next right choice. Like, no matter what was happening over here or what anybody was saying, as long as I knew that my next step was going to be the right choice, I knew everything was going to be okay. And I just had faith in that.
It doesn't come easy, does it?
No.
Tell us some more of those moments that help propel you forward and keep you going forward, those small victories that have added up to this point of recovery.
Well, there was a lot along the way, but small victories like my daughter coming back, getting visits with her. Small victories like people bashing our names, but yet we could turn around and people could see us and tell that, you know, we weren't those people anymore. I struggled a lot with that. I struggled a lot with people constantly doubting my recovery, or people saying I was never going to change. It was all fake, you know, just lots of things like that. And that can harm somebody in recovery. It really can.
Oh, my.
I just had such an amazing support system that it did harm me emotionally and mentally.
Sure.
But I never relapsed because of it, because I used my tools in my toolbox. You know, I called people, I reached out, I would go to meetings. I know when I first got out of jail, you and Rose picked me up or maybe Rose, I can't remember if it was both of you or one of you, picked me up for a meeting because I did not have a vehicle. And I remember I would go to meeting every day of the week. If I wasn't at work, I was at a meeting, you know, because that was where I felt safe. And I felt like, at least if I'm here, I'm not going to get high today. And then gradually you get strength and you just start to grow into this new life, and it becomes your new normal, you know? So when you see people getting high, you know, you're just like, what? For me now, I'm like, why can't they just cross over? Why can't they just make it to sobriety? And it gets hard to remember how hard it was to do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's like climbing, and you get so tired there are only a few steps in front of you, but you have nothing left to get you there. Yeah. So you've talked a lot about your daughter there and the breakdown of the relationship, and now that moment of clarity that you had with her. What about other people from your past, and where are you with them?
Well, you know, my mother and I always had a very, very rocky relationship, and I thought for the longest time early in my recovery, the first year or so, that several times I tried to make amends, and I would let it bother me when she wouldn't fully accept that. But I had to just back off from that and let her have her time, you know. And for the first time and as long as I can remember, for right now, since my grandmother passed away, and we actually had Thanksgiving at my mom and dad's this year with my brothers and my mom and dad and just all of our kids, and it was a beautiful thing.
It worked.
It did.
First time in a long time.
And we're all getting together on Christmas too, so that's huge. Just things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Relationships aren't rebuilt in a day either.
No, these are tears of joy.
Oh, that's great. What else would you like to share that will help some others understand the battle? What would you like to say to maybe somebody who's done damage in their relationship with their child? What kind of advice would you give them?
I think that when you have so much you want to prove when you get clean, you know, first, like, you want to show them, and you just keep telling them, I'm doing this, but you never, for me, I didn't stop and take into consideration all the things that my kids were going through. It was what I was going through and what I needed to do to make myself feel better, because I'm moving along in my recovery.
Okay.
See, I'm in recovery, I'm doing it, and it took me a while before I realized that just because I'm in recovery doesn't mean that they're in recovery from the pain I caused them. And so we still deal with this. Zane.
That's your son, right?
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's going to be 8.
Okay.
But he, all the domestic violence, if there's a loud voice or a raised voice, he flinches, you know, and he was never, you know, it's just, he's seen a lot of that. So when loudness comes, he thinks if something physical is coming that he's going to see. And, and that's not been for a long time. He's getting a lot better with it. But I think he had maybe a little PTSD from that. And it was being aware, like, make sure you don't raise your voice. Make sure you don't, because to him, that's trauma. So if I'm trying to tell him to do something, I'm not going to try to discipline him by raising my voice to him, because that's not what he needs.
And he's not going to hear you after
No.
you've raised your voice. I'm going to guess that he
Right.
shuts down because of the pain he feels at a moment
Yep.
like that.
Yep. And I think he has a little bit of separation anxiety. He doesn't like to really go anywhere and stay anywhere. He's always with Rob or I if he's not at school or daycare, like just always with us. He does.
All of that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That separation anxiety, PTSD. I see it more than I wish I did in so many cases, so many situations. And I think we're all in the PTSD of some type, be it from a health issue, the loss of a job, be it addiction, whatever our recovery may be, there's some PTSD involved.
Yep. And I think, I lost my grandparents. My grandmother passed away first, and that's really when everything for me really started to go south.
You were really close with
she
her,
was-
as I recall.
Yeah, she was like a mom to me in every aspect, short of giving me life. You know what I mean? And so when I lost her, it was really hard. And I mean, there's sadness when I think about her now, but there's a lot more joy. Like when I think about her, I can think about the good times I had with her, the things I share with her. And I find myself wanting to be like that. I want to give my kids these traditional things. I want to, and I try hard to strive and do that, where a couple years ago, I didn't even know what they were doing because I was out here doing all this crazy madness, and I struggle a lot with the lost time that I had with Alyssa, knowing that I can't gain that back, knowing that all the wrongs I did can't be made right because some of them can't be fixed, But I tell myself a lot when I start to get these thoughts in my head that, yesterday's gone. There's not a thing in this world that I can do about anything that happened yesterday. We'll never see that time again. So I strive daily to disregard yesterday and start fresh every day.
Make it a better day
Every
today
day,
than
yes.
yesterday, so you don't have those to be sorry about.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like as long as I'm doing everything I should be doing and giving it my best, that's all I can do. That's all I can do.
Jolene, tell us where you are now. Share with us some of the comforts and the peace that you have and how you're able to look back at this, not ignore it. You feel it, but you know you're beyond so much of the struggle. Not completely, but certainly in a big way.
because the struggle will be there, I think, forever.
Absolutely.
Just the choices you make once the problems arise, but for life is good, Randy. For my family and I, we are doing well. Alyssa moved out. She has her own house. She stopped and see me today, which was nice. So I love the visits like that. I don't see her a lot, but
She is of an adult age. She didn't move out just out of anger. She felt it was time to leave the nest.
yeah, she
right?
turned 18 and said she had to go. So she's only about a mile down the road from us, but she's doing good. But it's really nice when your kids choose to stop and see you. So that's nice. It makes my day when she does that. Rob, it's the same job he's had for a long time. I work at the glass factory now, so I don't get to go to meetings and stuff like I would like to. I work a 7-day swing shift, so I'm exhausted most of the time. But we go camping a lot. We spend a lot of time together as family. We enjoy each other's company. And those are all things I took for granted for such a long time. And I think had I not lost every bit of that and had to fight so hard to get it back, maybe I wouldn't have valued it like I do now.
That's certainly got to add to the value of it, make it so worth so much more to you and to Rob as well. And for you guys to have that rebuilt relationship.
It's crazy. It's learning who somebody is all over again, because Rob and I were never sober together. We met each other getting high on drugs. So we were never sober together. But now that we are, it's like when you're in that life of drugs, you're not really caring about what somebody else likes or dislikes, what they're comfortable with or not, and now we can, use your words. Like I'm not okay with this, or yes, I'd love to do that. And it's the communication is very important, and we couldn't do that before, and now we have that.
The selfishness is gone, and you're looking out for each other instead of self. Yes.
Yes, because his mom is battling some health issues right now, and he called me the other night when I was at work. Was telling me about it, and instantly my heart hurt for him. But then I went to this place of fear for a minute. Because we've been through a lot together, but the death of a parent is not something that either one of us have ever faced, And so when you come from addiction, you're thinking of everything that's going to happen. All the pros, the cons, the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and what you hope can happen, So I'm sitting there in my mind, I'm thinking, God, I hope my husband's strong. Like whatever happens, that he will have the tools and the ability to move forward positively and continue it, and that I will be able to be there and be whatever it is he needs so that he can do that, So you really are thinking about the other person and what they need. It's a whole different life.
You've got to relearn and relive.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's obvious you're getting there. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You know that.
Yeah.
As you know, the name of our podcast is Faith in Your Recovery. What do those 4 words, faith in your recovery, mean to you?
Faith in my recovery. I don't know, Randy. I think it is, for me, recovery is the life I want, and I have to have faith that I am capable of doing it, and that no matter what happens, you can always make the choice to keep moving forward and not go back. So when I have weak moments, as we all do, I don't pick up the phone and call a friend. I don't pick up the phone and call, a peer recovery coach or anything. I pick up the phone and I call you. I pick up the phone and I call my Uncle Jason. And I think that's because when the world starts to feed me the nonsense that makes me doubt what I have going on in my life, I always need somebody that can revert me back to how I got here to begin with. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And somebody who knows your story. You don't have to tell the whole story. They know where you're at.
Yeah, and it really keeps me grounded, and I value those things. And for me, that's what it is. Faith in my recovery is knowing that if I'm at that limit, all I got to do is reach out. And I have to be able to do that.
And that's what it takes out there, folks. Don't give up. Keep seeking. Have that support circle, whether it's a recovery group or church or classmates or whatever it may be. Get with those folks who are looking at goals the same as yours.
Absolutely.
Yeah, continue forward with a positive mission and surround yourself with folks who are after that same thing.
Yeah.
So, Jolene, is there anything else you'd like to share? Anything.
I just want people to know that recovery is hard. There'll be days that you're on your worst day that maybe you don't want to get out of bed and you're fighting everything. And early in my recovery, I used to remember my worst day is only going to have 24 hours in it. This day is only going to have 24 hours in it. Lay down and sleep it off if I have to. Whatever it takes to make it through that day, And on the other side, there is a beautiful life, and a better life. And you just have to get it. So many people out here are struggling and they're losing their lives. And if it was easy enough for one of us to go out there and do it for them, Randy, we would. We absolutely would. But you have to be responsible for your own life. You have to make the choice to save your own life. And I really want people to start realizing that nothing magical is going to come around and do it for you. And some people may make recovery look glamorous and all this, and they don't tell you the painful truths of it. It is hard, and it's ugly. And on the other side of hard and ugly, it's beautiful. You just got to make it there.
Yes, and you got to scratch and claw to get
whatever
there.
It takes.
As you were saying there about those tough days and just getting through the day, I thought of an old adage. I forget exactly how it went, but thus far we've survived 100% of our worst days that we didn't believe we could make it through.
Yeah, I look back now and I'm thinking, so many times, never would I have thought I'd be here now, living the life I'm living.
Well, we're glad you are. that victory path. And I know that you've gone with us to schools and spoken. You've shared your story. You've reached out to others. You've shared what's been given to you. And I think that just helps to perpetuate forward motion.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's important that people see love and kindness, so like when you're passing somebody in the store or on the street and you see that they're high or they're struggling, don't be that person that's, oh, look at them, go up and say, hi, how are you? Is there anything I can do to help you today? And I think that goes a long way. People don't realize that just a little bit of kindness and compassion can go such a long way. That's what did it for us too. Brianna's Hope is filled with love. That's all. That doesn't matter what you're doing, what your drug is, what anything is going on in your life. You could come in there and tell them you just killed somebody, and you're there because you need support. And they're going to hear you. They're not going to judge you, and that's the beauty of it. And I think more people need to do that for people.
Yeah, it's just that idea of trying to be there and to offer yourself without condemnation or judgment. None of us need somebody else to beat us up.
Right.
We do good enough ourselves that for sure. Well, listen, Jolene, thank you. Thank you for joining us here in Faith in Your Recovery.
Thank you for having me, Randy.
It's been a pleasure. God bless. Take care.
All right.
See ya.
Don't give up on yourself and don't give in to the urge. Your answer, your healing, your recovery may be in our next episode. Have faith in your recovery by having faith in yourself, your journey, and above all, God. Believe and stay in the fight.